めじゃない過ちは繰り返さない不可能など言い訳だろう嘘じゃないあなたの笑顔こそが僕に何度だって力くれるよ僕にとってのビジョンはあなた
Hello YouTube, I'm back again with another video. This time I'm going to be doing a Magic Gathering Modern deck profile, which happens to be my Rakdos Beatdown Burn deck. And I'm not going to really explain too much, I'm going to proceed with the deck profile. So onto the card. Starting off, we're playing a playset of Bone Crusher Giant. I explained this before, so basically I'm not going to get into much in detail, but it says it has the ability Instant Venture. Damage can't be prevented this turn. It deals 2 damage to any target, whether it be creature, planeswalker, or player. Whenever Bone Crusher Giant becomes the target of a spell, Bone Crusher Giant deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. So whether it be you that targets it or your opponent. We're using also a playset of Eidolon of the Great Revel. It's an enchantment creature spirit. Whenever a player casts a spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, Eidolon of the Great Revel deals 2 damage to that player. We're also playing a playset of Lightning Skelemental, which also has Trample and Haste, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards 2 cards. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice Lightning Skelemental. A new addition to the deck, we're playing a playset of Unstoppable Slasher. It has a death touch. It's a zombie assassin. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they lose half their life rounded up. So basically that means that this card has to deal actual combat damage to the player, not the creature. So if you deal damage to the creature but not the player, the effect won't be able to resolve. And whenever Unstoppable Slasher dies, if it had no counters on it, return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control with 2 stun counters on it. So basically, when it's tapped, it has 2 stun counters. One of the stun counters have to be removed in order for it to be untapped. So if it loses the second stun counter, it still remains tapped because it still has 1 more. And after the last stun counter, once that gets removed, it gets untapped during your second untap step. But the reason why we're playing this is because it gives burn more of a purpose. It makes burn a lot more efficient, and it's just like an absolutely viable, reasonable card to actually play. So why wouldn't you not include this? Simply because it makes it that much easier to kill your opponent, including the fact that it has death touch and the fact it can deal damage equal to half their life. So you need something like that to be able to burn your opponent that much faster. Another playset, we're playing Vexing Devil. When Vexing Devil enters the battlefield, any opponent may have it deal 4 damage to them. If a player does sacrifice Vexing Devil, although there are also other alternatives if you're trying to run like creatures with haste that have like 1 cost, whether it be a red or black, but I like Vexing Devil simply because how strong it is. And yes, the opponent has the option to sacrifice it, although it does deal 4 damage to them. But I like the idea of having to like confuse your opponent, and that it gives you opportunities to like pretty much like pave way for your burn cards, giving you an easier opportunity to kill your opponent a lot more easier. So you just have to figure how to utilize this card properly in order for it to be more effective. And for our instant, we're just playing the 4 Lightning Bolt. Very important card, no exceptions. You cannot play less than that because it's an instant, and it's a red, 1 red, and it deals 3 damage to any targets. For our lands, we're playing playset of Blackleaf Cliffs. It is a dual land with colors red and black. Blackleaf Cliff enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer lands. So if you control 3 or more lands, this card will remain tapped until your next untap step. 3 Blood Crypt, which is also a dual land, has blood red and black. As Blood Crypt comes into play, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, Blood Crypt comes to play tapped instead. Our fetch land, which happens to be our playset of Bloodstained Mire, you can tap this card, pay 1 life, sacrifice Bloodstained Mire, search your library for a swamp or mount card and put it into the battlefield and shuffle your library. For those who are unaware, it doesn't have to just be your basic land, it can also be your dual lands, as long as they mention one of these card types, Swamp or Mountain. Since this card mentions Swamp or Mountain, you can be able to easily fetch it with Bloodstained Mire. A playset of Dragon Skull Summit, same thing, a dual land, which also utilizes red and black. Whenever Dragon Skull Summit enters the battlefield tapped, so basically it would enter tapped unless you don't control a Swamp or Mountain, but if you control Swamp or Mountain, you could be able to play it untapped, which is very important because it helps be able to utilize more mana, and that we can be able to like engage more with your opponent, and you'll be able to see more cards and be able to burn them even faster. So I do feel it's efficient, not only going for more stronger plays, but to be able to burn your opponent more than once. Just 2 mountain, because we need a ways of being able to fetch our mountains, and so we can be able to burn our opponent. And this is also important because this helps you set up your Dragon Skull Summit. We're also playing 1 fetch land, happens to be Polluted Delta. It can be any of the others as long as it mentions like swamp or like mountain, but we're simply utilizing the 1 Polluted Delta just to give us access to our mountain and swamp regardless if it mentions the other. But doing that makes it where we can pretty much have just pretty much not only be able to ramp up, but to ensure that we have most of our colors on the field and we can be able to have easy access to them. No different than Bloodstained Mire. 1 Skeleton Tarn, same thing, but this one allows you to pay 1 life. You sacrifice Skeleton Tarn, you search your library for an island or mountain card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. And just the 1 swamp, 1 is enough because I see no need, because I feel like if you play more than 1 swamp, it becomes heavily bricky since you're playing a lot of cards that can search out with these. So for our sorceries, we're playing 1 Bump in the Night, target opponent loses 3 life. Also has the flashback ability where you pay 5 colors mana, 1 red. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost and exile. So basically that means you can pretty much play the same thing, but you have to pay 6 mana and you gotta exile from your. But the reason why you need this card, just in case, like if you have no other cards in hand and you have the mana for it, you will want to be able to at least play a card that can outright kill your opponent. This comes in clutch. So basically you wait to the final moment once you know that your opponent has the least amount left. If they have at least 3 or less, then essentially from there you have an outright chance of killing your opponent, giving you the opportunity to kill them as quickly as possible. And you could decide to cut it 3, but I always feel like the ability to have a flashback, although it may cost more, it will come in handy in case you don't have enough cards to replenish your burn effects or be able to like hit them constantly. And we're also playing a playset of Riftwall, which is another sorcery. It deals 3 damage to any target, although yes, it does cost 2 more. But for another reason behind is why, because it has the ability to spend 1. Rather than pay this card from your hand, you may pay 1 instead and exile with the time counter on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last is removed, cast it without paying its mana cost. So basically what this means that you can pay 1 red to play this card on your next turn, so you can deal 3 to either your opponent's creature, planeswalker, or the player itself. And the moment you pay that, once you activate it while it's been exiled, it goes back to your graveyard. So you have it exiled just in case you decide to remove the time counter. Basically, there's other cards that have that effect as well. But the moment you do that, is that while it's in exile, it's only temporary. you already paid the red mana, so the moment you activate it, it goes back to your graveyard from exile. For our playset of Skewer the Critics, has the ability Spectacle. You may cast this spell for its spectacle cost rather than its mana cost if an opponent lost life this turn. Same thing, deals 3 damage to any target, so this will come in very important if you hit your opponent, whether it be an attack, whether it be like from a creature, or you pretty much deal damage to them by one of your instants or sorceries or any other cards. So this gives you the chance to make sure that you can make sure that your opponent is pretty much gonna have to face defeat, because that is the whole purpose behind the deck, is that like deal as much damage as you can, that way you can deplete their life to 0. And for our final sorcery, which is a playset, we're playing Thoughtseize. Target player reveals their hand, you choose a non-command card from it, that player discards that card, you lose 2 life. And although this isn't a burn card, this is very important, simply because in case they might have a card that kill you, or you're trying to get rid of their starter cards, or there could be a card that may put you at risk, or may possibly end up killing you. So Thoughtseize is one of those cards. It's just great going early game. Great card going first, 100%. But it's also a card that ensures that you have a chance at making sure that they don't have enough resources, or they don't have the card to pretty much be able to counter your strategy. So at the same time, not only is it to hit stars, but to make sure that they don't have any means of countering your deck, so that you have several ways of pretty much trying to deplete your opponent's life and without any interruption. And going off on the side deck, it's all up to personal preference. We're playing 3 Blast Zone. Originally this was Feed the Tone, but I feel like it was a lot more weaker, and this card feels a lot more flexible since you can use it as an instant ability. But besides that, Blast Zone enters the and it's a land too. Blast Zone enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. You could tap it to add 1 colorless mana. You can add 2x converted mana, put charge counters on Blast Zone equal to that amount. And then you can pay 3 mana as well as tap Blast Zone, sacrifice the Blast Zone, store each non-land permanent with mana value equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. So the reason why I'm playing this, you guys, just in case there might be a deck I'm not familiar with, so I just got, even though this might be a little bit slower, but once I have an idea and knowledge of what my opponent's playing, this makes it a lot more effective. So I gotta keep track with the type of mana that they're using, the converted mana, and I have a chance of getting rid of most of their cards while on our play. But I just gotta know when to time it and use it carefully. 1 Damnation, which is enough. You don't want to run too many cards that destroy all your creatures, because I feel like it puts you behind as well. But what makes Damnation so much better, like, although it does cost 2 black as well as 2 colors, destroy all creatures and they can't be regenerated. For what that means, that if they get destroyed, they can come back by its own ability if it's been destroyed by the effect. It just cannot come back after it's like in response to this card's effect. So they can be able to return themselves from the graveyard to the battlefield, but only by its own, but if it's not in response to this card. 3 Engineered Explosives, same thing as Blast Zone, just so because not only is the card more flexible, just so I can be more aware of the decks I might be up against, so I can gain more knowledge as well as be able to anticipate the type of mana that they're using as well as the mana value. So again, pretty much same thing. I gotta learn to pretty much time this card carefully and know when to use it. But I'm gonna explain how this card is used. Basically, pay 2 mana, sacrifice Engineered Explosives, destroy each non-land permanent that includes yours with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Engineered Explosives. And so another side deck card is Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. Personally, I don't have enough space into the main deck, so I think it's just better having side just in case. But basically how this works, when it enters the battlefield, you sacrifice it unless it is escaped. But thing is though, it just requires 2 mana, 1 red, 1 black. it will come in useful because it's you're basically forcing your opponent to pick cards from the hand. If not, they lose 3 life. So whenever Crocs enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card, then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way, they lose 3 life. And although you do have to sacrifice it at the beginning the moment you summon it, but if you haven't used escape ability, but the thing of how escape works is that you gotta pay 2 black, 2 red, so this is an instant ability. Exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its escape cost, so that means you could be able to summon him, return him from the grave to your battlefield, and be able to do the same thing with his first effect. 3 Shadow Storm, just to prepare in case we're playing against a bunch of artifacts since they're non-color, since they're pretty much colorless, non-colors. Does the same thing as Damnation, but it destroys destroys all artifacts. They can't be regenerated, and pretty much costs the same thing, but the fact that it's only 2 red rather than 2 black. This will come in important in case, since I feel like artifacts are just a lot more easy to access. You can just cast them without having to worry about whatever colors to utilize them with. It's more so simply because I feel like you can literally play them in any single deck, regardless whether it's colorless. But now it honestly depends on what the card says. So that I gotta be fully aware of. But it's like, since you can pretty much use them in any color deck, it's like always be sure to be fully aware that they might get in the way, and you need some ways to actually deal with them. And this card's actually one of the better ones. 3 Soul Guide Lantern. Again, another important card that I'm gonna have to utilize. Only costs 1 mana. When Soul Guide Lantern enters the battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard. So it is mandatory you have to exile a card from the target card from the graveyard, and you have at least 2 options. You can either sacrifice Soul Guide Lantern, exile each opponent's graveyard. You can pay 1 mana and then tap, sacrifice Soul Guide Lantern, draw a card. So this is in case your opponent is heavily reliant on the graveyard. If they have a bunch of cards that they can use that they can activate or cast from grave, whether it be exile, flashback, like I said, same thing. Maybe something like Croxa, for example. But you always want to be able to be fully prepared just in case you encounter that type of deck. So this card is going to be important aside, not in the main because you're not too fully aware who you're up against, but this is in case you have knowledge of who you're up against. So it's like, this card is going to be needed and it is mandatory because you don't know who you're going to be up against, and it makes your deck that more reliable. So I would say the same for most of my cards. So for the last card, since I don't have space in the main deck, we're just playing the 1 Terza Light Shatter, which requires 2 colors, 1 red. It's a legendary creature. Orc Wizard has haste. When Terza Light Shatter enters, discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. Whenever Terza Light Shatter attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, exile a card at random from your graveyard. You may play that card this turn. So, although yes, it is random, again, it definitely serves a purpose for burn, but it also gives you access to your side deck cards, which is really great. And sometimes the timing can be bad when you use them, but since we're playing a lot of burn cards, this card will be a lot more powerful. And then if you have multiple copies, it always comes into play, and it becomes that more useful. And it's no guarantee, although you're gambling, but you want to ensure that you have as access to many cards as possible. And the best part is, although it's exiled at random, you can play that card, and then even if it leaves the field, it goes back to your graveyard, which I feel in itself makes the deck that more efficient and a lot more consistent. And you definitely will see a lot of results. But like, if you can manage to somehow keep them alive, then you have ways of keeping a bunch of your cards alive and being able to reuse them more often. But I feel like I've been way too long with this video. I have been able to detail and further explain to you guys how the deck works, and hopefully you guys have a better understanding. But I'm gonna have to end off here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to check for more upcoming content later in the future. Be sure to check the notifications, comment, like, subscribe. Thank you.